It's time for the 8-Minute Devotion. The 8-Minute Devotion is a daily message that fills you with hope and encouragement from the Word of God. Here's your host, Pastor Cameron Walcott.
Well, hello, and welcome back to the 8-Minute Devotion. This is our Tuesday episode, and this is day 20 of our 21 days of gratitude. That means we just have today and tomorrow left in this series before we take our short Thanksgiving break. But today, we are going to have our 20th day of gratitude. And my theme for today is we need to focus on God's grace and not our own greatness. If we want to be thankful, if we want to live our lives with gratitude, the number one thing we can do is focus on God's grace and not our own greatness. When we start to think, I have what I have because of myself, I earned it, I got it, then we'll stop being thankful. We'll stop having gratitude because it'll be like, well, God, you blessed me, but I earned the blessing. God, you gave me this, but I earned it. You were just paying me back for everything I had done for you. No. Everything we have in life is due to the grace of God. And we need to learn to focus on His grace and not our own greatness. You know, when I start to be convinced of all my own powers, when I start to be convinced of everything I can do well, I can forget to be grateful. When I start to think that I have worked and earned all of the good things in my life, I am in a dangerous place. But when I think, God, everything I have comes from you. Everything that I've achieved comes from you. All of these blessings that are around me, they're not because of my hard work, but they're because of you. Then I will be so grateful to God. In this Thanksgiving week, let's realize the blessings in our life. You may have worked hard. God may have given you discipline and a sharp mind. You may have worked hard, but ultimately it's not because of your hard work. It's because of God. God's the one who gave you the ability to work hard. God's the one who gave you the discipline. God's the one who caused you to be born in this time, in this place, where hard work will pay off. God's the one, even if you had a good work ethic, there are so many little things that could have gone wrong and you wouldn't have gotten the blessings. It's all because of God. When I think I am very good on my own, there's little need to be thankful. But when I realize my own shortcomings, I can be thankful for the blessings I receive in spite of these things. The Apostle Paul put it this way, 1 Corinthians 15:10. He said something that's really interesting to me. 1 Corinthians 15:10. He says this, "But by the grace of God I am what I am, and His grace toward me was not in vain. On the contrary, I worked harder than any of them, though it was not I, but the grace of God that is with me." Really interesting statement by Paul there. He goes, look, everything I am is by the grace of God. Everything I've accomplished, everything I've done, everything that I am on the inside, the character God's given me, the grace, it's all by the grace of God. I am nothing without Him. Everything I've done is by God's grace. But then he says, look, I did work hard. I worked harder than all the rest. So, saying it's all about grace is not an excuse for us not to work hard. It's not an excuse for us to be lazy in the kingdom. Paul says, look, I did work hard. I worked harder than all the rest. But it wasn't me, ultimately. It was the grace of God working in me. I work, but it's God's grace doing the work. I have to work, but it's God's grace ultimately doing the work. You see, the Apostle Paul had accomplished so much. He had worked so hard. Yet what did he say? It was not I, but the grace of God in me. His achievements came not because of himself, but because of the grace of God. Let me ask you, what have you accomplished outside of the grace of God? Was it your good grades? Was it your high-paying job? Was it your healthy relationships? Friends, these all come from God. He gave you the intelligence. He gave you the abilities. He gave you the family members. Everything you have comes from Him, so you should always keep a humble heart and a humble mind. Everything I have comes from God. He even gave me the breath that I'm breathing. If He stopped giving me my breath, I would drop dead in a moment. God gave me the very breath that I breathe. So friends, whatever blessings you have, you didn't earn it. You didn't work harder for it. It all came from God. You may have worked hard, but it was God working through you. Even the ability to work hard comes through God. So never think that God isn't giving you what you deserve. Never think that God isn't giving you a fair shake. Your very life came from Him, and your abilities come from Him. And we can be grateful when we realize that, when we truly realize it. Every time you accomplish something, focus on the greatness of God who gave you the gifts to do it. Be thankful and not prideful. When you accomplish more than others, stay humble and realize it was God who gave you the gifts. You know, there's a story of a great evangelist named D.L. Moody, Dwight L. Moody, and he lived in the 19th century in the city of Chicago. He led a great revival in Chicago during that time, and many thousands and thousands of people came to salvation under the ministry of D.L. Moody. And one night after the meeting, they were walking home after the meeting in Chicago with D.L. Moody and his friends, his colleagues, associates. And as they were walking through the streets, they saw a drunk man. They saw an intoxicated man stumbling down the streets. And he clearly was drunk. He clearly was under the grip of alcohol. He was a sinful man stumbling down the streets. And you know, Dwight L. Moody's associates, they looked at the man and they said, "Look how sad that is. Look at that man, so sinful, so terrible the way that he's living." And you know, they kind of looked down at the man due to his drunkenness, due to the way he was acting. Do you know what happened next? Dwight L. Moody looked at that man, he pointed at him, and he told his associates and colleagues, "There but for the grace of God go I." In other words, he said, if it wasn't for God's grace, I would be that man. I would be that man stumbling down the street. I would be that drunk man. The only reason I'm not that man is because of God's grace. And instead of just pointing a finger at the sinful man and condemning him and pointing out how wrong his lifestyle was, and it was wrong, Dwight L. Moody said, look, if it wasn't for God's grace, that would be me. Dwight L. Moody had done more than any of the rest in that group. He had led more to the Lord. He had served longer. He had served more faithfully. Yet his attitude was, if it's not for God's grace, I would be the chief of sinners. I would be that drunken man. And friends, that's a lesson for us. We must always stay near the cross. We must always rely on the grace of God, that every good thing in us, it's not because of us. It's because of God's grace. It's because of God's mercy. There but for the grace of God go I. And that's a key to thankfulness in your life. If you want this attitude of gratitude, remind yourself, everything I have is God's grace. It's not because I'm great. It's all because of the grace of my risen Lord. Thank you for listening. One more day in our 21 days of gratitude, and that's coming up tomorrow on the 8-Minute Devotion.
Thank you for listening to the 8-Minute Devotion. Please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast wherever you listen to or watch it. And email us at the8minutedevotion@gmail.com with any questions or comments. May God bless you